Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Shocking Hollywood latest news update. The celebrity chef posted a video last week wearing a basic shirt and with his frosted tips swapped with a normal head of hair. But it's all part of a big game ad for Bosch. A certain portion of the internet was set ablaze last week by an Instagram post from celebrity chef Guy Fieri. The Food Network star and mayor of Flavortown is instantly recognizable thanks to his frosted tips, colorful bowling shirts, distinctive goatee, and blinged-out look. But in the Instagram video, he traded in the bleached blonde spikes and goatee for a clean-shaven and basic brown dad hairdo, and the bowling shirt for an understated button-down and slacks. After so many years celebrating my birthday as Guy, I figured I would celebrate it as just a guy, he said in the video, which garnered news coverage from outlets like Page 6 and InStyle. Some Instagram users speculated that Fieri used AI to create the alter ego, which made him almost unrecognizable. But The Hollywood Reporter can confirm that the basic new look is not actually part of a midlife makeover for Fieri. It is in fact a tee-up for a Super Bowl commercial for Bosch. The appliance maker released a teaser trailer Monday featuring both classic Guy Fieri and just a Guy Fieri. While the actual commercial will have to wait for Super Bowl Sunday, the Bosch teaser is another example of brands leaning on star power and unexpected humor to stand out in the weeks ahead of the game. With commercials costing $8 million for 30 seconds on NBC, brands like Bosch want to get the most bang for their buck, and the new cycle inspired by Fieri's reveal is exactly the sort of buzz they would be looking for. He has been somewhat low-key since tearing his quad in an on-set accident late last year.
And that detail about Guy Fieri keeping a lower profile after his on-set accident is exactly what made this transformation hit even harder. Because for months, fans had seen very little of the larger-than-life personality who once dominated television screens with non-stop energy, loud shirts, and a signature look that became part of pop culture itself. When Guy Fieri suddenly reappeared looking like a completely different man, the internet did what it always does. It panicked. Within minutes of that Instagram video going live, comment sections filled with confusion, disbelief, and wild theories. Some fans genuinely wondered if Guy Fieri was going through a midlife crisis. Others speculated that he was preparing for a serious dramatic acting role. A surprising number of users were convinced that artificial intelligence had been used to digitally alter his appearance. Because to many people, this did not look like Guy Fieri. It looked like a stranger wearing his face. And that was exactly the point. What made the moment so powerful was how deeply Guy Fieri's image is tied to his identity. For more than 2 decades, he has carefully built a brand around excess, color, confidence, and unapologetic personality. The frosted tips were not just a hairstyle, they were a symbol. The bowling shirts were not just clothing, they were a uniform. The goatee, the rings, the sunglasses, the loud laugh, all of it formed a character that audiences felt they personally knew. So when that character vanished overnight, people felt unsettled. In the video, Guy spoke calmly, dressed plainly, looking directly into the camera without his usual performance energy. His line about celebrating his birthday as just a guy sounded simple on the surface, but emotionally, it struck a nerve. Because everyone, at some point in their life, wonders what they would look like without the persona they've built. And Guy Fieri, whether intentionally or not, tapped directly into that fear. The speculation only grew stronger when mainstream media outlets began picking up the story. Page 6 ran headlines questioning whether Guy Fieri had reinvented himself. InStyle analyzed the new look like it was a celebrity breakup or a career reset. Twitter threads exploded with side-by-side comparisons of classic Guy versus just a Guy. Memes followed. Endless memes. Some joked that Guy Fieri had finally been replaced by his long-lost accountant twin. Others claimed this was proof that time eventually comes for everyone, even the mayor of Flavortown. A few fans admitted uncomfortably that without the costume, they barely recognized him at all. And then came the AI rumors. In a time when deepfakes and digital face swaps are becoming more common, many people genuinely believed that this was not real footage. They assumed that the video had been generated, filtered, or manipulated. Entire Reddit threads were devoted to analyzing shadows, skin texture, and eye movement to determine whether this was a real transformation or a digital trick, which made the reveal even more effective. Because the truth was far more clever. This was not a midlife crisis.
This was not a reinvention. This was marketing. Very smart marketing. When Bosch released its teaser featuring both versions of Guy Fieri, everything suddenly clicked into place. The confusion, the speculation, the viral attention, none of it was accidental. This was a carefully designed campaign. Bosch understood something critical about modern advertising. People no longer watch commercials. They watch controversies. They watch mysteries. They watch transformations. By letting the internet believe, even for a few days, that Guy Fieri had abandoned his iconic look, Bosch created something far more valuable than a 30-second commercial. They created a story that spread for free, a story that dominated headlines, a story that made millions of people curious enough to watch a teaser they might have otherwise ignored. And it worked. In the teaser, the contrast between classic Guy and just a Guy is played for humor, but also for identity. Two versions of the same man. One loud, confident, flamboyant, the other quiet, reserved, almost invisible. It becomes less about appliances and more about personas. Because in many ways, this campaign reflects something much deeper about celebrity culture. How much of what we love about celebrities is actually them, and how much is just a costume? Guy Fieri has always leaned into his larger-than-life image. He made himself a caricature on purpose. He understood early on that television rewards extremes. The louder you are, the more memorable you become. But this campaign proves something else. Underneath all of that, he is still just a guy. A man who can shave his beard, change his hair, put on a plain shirt, and instantly become invisible in a crowd. And that is both fascinating and unsettling, because it forces us to confront how fragile fame really is. One haircut away from anonymity, one wardrobe change away from irrelevance. At the same time, the timing of this campaign could not have been better. With Super Bowl ad slots now costing up to $8 million for just 30 seconds, brands are under more pressure than ever to make those seconds count. No company wants to waste that kind of money on a commercial people forget 5 minutes later. So brands now start their commercials weeks in advance, with teasers, with fake controversies, with viral moments, with stories that blur the line between reality and performance. Bosch did not buy 30 seconds. They bought an entire news cycle, and Guy Fieri was the perfect vehicle for that, because he is instantly recognizable, universally known, and completely tied to a visual identity. Change that identity, and the entire internet notices. What makes this even more interesting is how quietly Guy Fieri himself has been moving lately. After tearing his quad in an on-set accident late last year, he pulled back from public appearances. He slowed down his schedule. He kept a lower profile. There were even rumors that he might scale back some of his television work. So when he suddenly appeared transformed, people were already primed to believe that something major was happening. Bosch simply used that moment, used that curiosity, used that uncertainty, and turned it into a campaign. In many ways, this may go down as one of the smartest Super Bowl marketing setups of the year. Not because the commercial will necessarily be the funniest or the flashiest, but because it proved something essential. In 2026, attention is the real product, and confusion is the fastest way to get it. As Super Bowl Sunday approaches, millions of viewers will now be waiting for that Bosch commercial, not because they care about appliances, but because they want closure. They want to see how the story ends, which version of Guy wins, classic Guy or just a Guy. And perhaps the bigger question is not about Guy Fieri at all, but about us. Why we are so disturbed when a celebrity removes their mask, why we need our icons to stay frozen in the roles we assign them, and why a simple haircut can make the entire internet feel like reality just shifted slightly off its axis. Because in the end, this was never about hair. It was about identity. And that is why this moment worked so perfectly.
Because long before the Bosch logo ever appeared on screen, the campaign had already achieved its most important goal. It made people feel something. Confusion, curiosity, discomfort, and most importantly, interest. In the modern media landscape, interest is everything. We live in a time where audiences scroll past hundreds of headlines every day without stopping. Breaking through that noise requires more than a good product or a funny commercial. It requires a disruption. Something that feels out of place. Something that makes people pause and say, wait, what? Guy Fieri's transformation did exactly that. For a brief moment, it felt like reality itself had glitched, and that glitch forced millions of people to stop scrolling. What's especially fascinating is how naturally this campaign blended into the cultural anxiety of our time. We are living in an era where identities are fluid, appearances are constantly curated, and authenticity is both demanded and doubted at the same time. When people saw just a Guy, they were not just reacting to a haircut.
They were reacting to the idea that someone they thought they knew might not be who they believed at all. That fear is deeply modern, because today we no longer trust images. We question filters. We question editing. We question AI. We question whether anything we see online is real. So when Guy Fieri suddenly appeared unrecognizable, the instinct was not to accept it. The instinct was to investigate it. And that investigation became part of the entertainment. In a way, Bosch did not just advertise a product. They staged a social experiment. They watched how quickly rumors spread, how fast theories formed, how confidently people claimed expertise, and how easily the internet convinced itself that something impossible had happened. What followed was a masterclass in controlled revelation. Bosch did not immediately explain the campaign. They waited. They allowed the speculation to breathe. They let journalists write think pieces. They let influencers debate. They let the story mature. Only then did they release the teaser, and by the time they did, the audience was already emotionally invested. That is the true power of narrative advertising, not telling people what to think, but letting them build the story themselves, and then gently revealing the truth. This approach reflects a much larger shift in how brands now compete for attention. Traditional advertising is dying. People skip ads, mute commercials, install blockers, but they cannot skip a mystery. They cannot block a conversation. They cannot mute a cultural moment. So brands now aim to create moments instead of messages, and Guy Fieri's Just a Guy may become a textbook example of how to do that successfully. But beyond marketing, this moment also revealed something very human about Guy Fieri himself. For years, critics have dismissed him as a cartoon, a caricature, a walking punchline. But this campaign quietly reminded everyone that behind the persona is a performer who understands timing, psychology, and audience behavior extremely well. He knew exactly how shocking this would be. He knew exactly how uncomfortable people would feel, and he leaned into it, not by explaining, but by staying silent, letting the world talk. That takes confidence, and it takes a deep understanding of fame, because only someone truly secure in their identity can afford to temporarily erase it. There is also an irony here that cannot be ignored. For years, Guy Fieri has been accused of being artificial, too loud, too stylized, too performative. And yet, when he finally appeared stripped of all performance, people immediately assumed it was fake, assumed it was AI, assumed it was a trick. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Have we reached a point where authenticity itself looks suspicious? Where normal feels unnatural? Where a man without a persona feels less real than the persona itself? In that sense, this campaign accidentally became a commentary on our culture, on how we relate to celebrities, on how we consume images, on how easily we distrust reality, and on how much we depend on familiar symbols to feel stable. As Super Bowl Sunday approaches, the anticipation around the Bosch commercial continues to grow. Not because people care deeply about dishwashers, but because they care about resolution. They want to see the final chapter of a story that started with a haircut. They want to know if Just a Guy disappears, if Classic Guy returns, if the two versions merge, and whether the joke lands. But perhaps the most important impact of this campaign will not be measured in sales. It will be measured in memory. Years from now, people may not remember what Bosch was selling, but they will remember the week when Guy Fieri vanished, when Flavortown lost its mayor, when the internet briefly believed that one of the most recognizable faces on television had become a stranger. And that, in the world of advertising, is a rare achievement, because products fade, but stories stay.